Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this this episode I've been waiting to do for the whole month of May. But we're in June. So, let's get with this introduction and let's find out what else I want to talk about. So, with that being said, let's talk about this. But before we get there, let's really have a deep conversation. So, welcome to your favorite Sunday or Saturday show, the King CJ Music Podcast, where we talk everything music, rumors, and much more. So, today I bring you someone I've been wanting to do this about. There's not many artists that make me want to actually talk about their music. There isn't many artists that when they drop an album do I ever go, this could be one of his best works. The cover to this is a bit inappropriate. And for ones that don't know by now about this Canadian artist that has done a lot of works, he has also written for a few people's favorite artists. He is what people will say. He is locked in the OVO workshop. He's a great person to make introductions, choruses, bridges. I bring you one of R&B's best artists. And the album I'm going to talk about, well, let me get to the album, because the album isn't a part of his name. But that artist, that album, that I said has an inappropriate cover, that you have to watch where you watch the album, where you have to pick up the phone when you're listening to this album, is PartynNextdoor 4. And that artist is PartynNextdoor. When I tell you, this album brings me so many songs, so many emotions. People were debating when this cover first dropped that it was gonna be inappropriate, and I mean, we got it. What do we expect from PartynNextdoor, right? What do we expect from PartynNextdoor? And to some extent, we got what we thought we were gonna get. In the most literal sense, we got what we were gonna get. We got PND 3, PND 2, but the better version, PND 4. To finish this series, if he decides to go PND 5, my reaction will be totally a reaction that people haven't seen. One moment. When people ask me, I have to be quite honest. There are a few songs on here that I love, and they're not the lead singles. This album in itself, and I'm going to overhype this album, and of course going to shock a lot of people when I come up with this. But when we, and he says it, so we're not getting a deluxe, which I'm happy about, right? But we hear stories. There's no features, but we hear stories. One of the best stories, or one of my favorite songs on here, but the best story that I hear from this album is PartynNextdoor's Stuck in My Ways. Where in this song we get PartynNextdoor just saying that he's gonna change his way. And he realizes that he was stuck in his ways. But and he just kind of confesses to this, like, I'm never going to change. Stuck in my ways for real. This song in itself I could give a deep dive where this song is one of the I could give like a deep dive to where the song is. It's when I say that this album sonically sounds great. It's you hear a lot of it, especially in like the ending of these songs. You'll hear like stories where the girl says, "Hey, I told the guy that I'm dealing with, that the guy that I'm dealing with that I only had it once with my ex, and he wants it." And you hear these intimate moments, and it's an emotional album, and this debate on if this is gonna be like a sexual centered album or an emotional album. It's just one of those albums where you can do a lot to this album, right? You've done a lot. This album is like it's 16 songs. It's a 55-minute track. It's a 55-minute album. But some of these are like extremely repeated, and we can look at the charts, and he probably won't chart high. But it's like introductions where it's like, "Y'all gonna make me lose my mind." And you hear him just talk about like the girls that he's into, and you hear about this situation, and the song is "Lost My Mind," where where you hear about this girl's addiction when she's on, well, I wouldn't even say addiction, but when she's on drugs and she has a tattoo of him on her thighs. It's explicit. Like this album, let me not phrase that in a way that y'all don't understand. This album's explicit. But this album in itself is just it's remarkable. It's truly, it's one of those albums where you go, this album, if it was by any other artist, he couldn't do. And so you get these explicit moments through these songs where he's like, "I'm thinking of your beauty." Like it's that soft, like subtle kind of like wordplay where you hear people go, "I thought he said this. No, I thought he said this. I thought he said this." It's when she's off. It's this song is so interesting because like when she's off that Molly. Look, I love this album. Her friends we found talked about where in the song he just kind of expresses it to his sense that when she listens to her friends, they're not looking out for her best need. Which he kind of breaks down, and to a certain extent, I love this album. Like if people say, "Yo, would you recommend this album for 2024?" Yeah, without a doubt, I would. I mean, I have a few doubts, right? Because we have our songs that are like pop songs, like Cheers, because it has an upbeat beat to it where you can really dance to it. But it's one of the best albums I've kind of heard, right? It's one of the it's weird for an R&B album, and I have an album that I'm gonna compare this to like probably this week or next weekend, but it's like Make It Up in the Morning, like this has a bunch of, especially if you're looking for caption size and music, without a doubt this has it. For example, when you listen to songs like "Make It to the Morning," you go It's a bunch of bridges where it's like "Make it to the morning, right." You hear the sexual songs where he goes, "Don't scream and shout." Like this album in itself is an album in which I'm loving to talk about because it's chaos. It's the morning. It's just chaos. It's like, wake up to the morning. Let's wake up together. It's so, and it's not like a very much of a tank versions of it. The melodies, the chorus, the instrumentals. This is an album in which, if we were to talk about any other artist, I'd have questions. He in the songs, for example, like "Cheer," "Makes It in the Morning," where he enforces this love stereotype that he just wants the girl to feel special. Which I think that's what I'm saying is, as many songs are on here, you get like it's up for debate, right? Like, you could go to the top 5 songs of this album are strictly about like the sexual nature of them, but then you get songs for Curtain or No Chill, in which it's great. It's not over, and you kind of hear like a storyline where he's bragging in No Chill, where he's like, where he just bragged, like, you are a star in the showroom, but I've had twins, and it's just like, even though I've done these experiences, I can get you out of my mind. Ooh, and he's just saying you have no chill, and it's, you can kind of, I wish he had put like a bickering scene in here where we could get like them going at it, not like that, but like in an argument. He's like, "Cause you're not wasting my time," and it's very subtle. Like, this is a track in which you can have a conversation with this album, because this album, this song "No Chill" is just nothing for me and everybody. This album is just this album where he just talks about you don't owe anybody. He's kind of like, he's painting a story where he's like, there's no chill, and then after a while we start having a conversation. I'll take you down to the private area. This is the song "No Chill." "No Chill" is probably up there with one of the best songs on the album, which personally I enjoy. Many people are gonna say I don't enjoy this song X, Y, and Z because the acoustics of this song in themselves are just, you hear this album sonically, you hear, it's just so simple. You hear the ensemble, you hear the voicemails perfectly. Like, if you were gonna hear an album with voicemails and R&B and how each other feels, this would kind of be that album. I have to say something about these skits. These skits that he put on his album, which are, you hear voicemails from like when girls were treating, and they're having conversations, right? They're having conversations, which I have to admit is one of the best conversations. But there's one interlude I kind of have to point out, because if I don't point it out, I would be unfair and I would be biased, right? It's a prayer. It's a mother's prayer. And in theory, it's supposed to be, okay, we're just trying to keep, I'm just trying to keep you safe. And she just kind of explains, I'm just trying to keep you safe. I just hope. This feels like this was personally recorded from somebody. It's, where she just kind of talks about being present in the moment, and the dualism from like the soul and the body, which is in a deeper context we can go into. And this album is one of these albums where you start to think this is personal, because it's so great. And this is what I mean when we go R&B and storytelling of people's albums. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for me to go, I don't like certain songs. However, and I have to say this because when I saw it originally, I thought I was on a Bryson Tiller's album. Right? And I have to point that out because Retreat is where you hear them having a calm conversation. And it's... You kind of just let a beat play. He lets a beat play for what? We'll say 47 minutes. Where's the phone call? She just says, I miss you. And she's just trying to figure out why. And it's this kind of thing where you hear people kind of retreat after an argument or a conflict in a relationship. You kind of hear them retreat. And by far, the way that this is done, textbook. And for Curtains to be after that, I think Curtains is what we've all been waiting for to release. And Curtains has been released earlier. You know, it's been assumed earlier, right? And I was kind of hoping for more. But there's one song I have to kind of mention. And they're very similar. They're similar in this beat that they take and the style that they take to do it. So Bryson Tiller's, his song is Whatever She Wants. PartynNextdoor's is Sorry We're Outside. It's up here at D4. I was taking a listen now. Where he goes, I shouldn't be outside. But Bryson Tiller goes, I'm outside. But you kind of hear him regression of him saying, I have someone at home. But I'm still outside. I shouldn't be outside. When he says outside, I'm assuming clubs, because you can find PartynNextdoor in clubs. Yeah. This song is, the album is so catchy. You'll probably hear through this episode of me going, love. You'll hear me, right? You'll see me, because half of this is scripted. It's scripted, but this, where you'll hear me put like certain lyrics in here, it's not scripted. So you hear me and you go, even in secrets. It's because this album is catchy. This album is extremely catchy. And I've been catching myself doing it. Yeah. I answer they didn't know me. It's extremely catchy. Without emotion. It's catchy, right? It's extremely catchy. So you hear emotions, and forgive my bad singing, but it's this song. You hear me kind of like singing, or kind of like saying the words through. It's Sorry, but I'm outside, and this, while it isn't my favorite on this album by any means, it's not in my top 5. It's very catchy because that tempo, that beat, you know, he makes some lines in here too. He goes to tell it, and it's just, it has that sexual tension behind his album. But this is an album you can just kind of listen to. You can just kind of listen to and go, okay, party. You know, like, okay, you could do this. And to a certain extent, I love that we could do this. And he kind of just confessed, I just want to be with you. I just kind of want to do sexual acts with you, which, it's weird because he's like, while I'm doing these actions, I'm thinking of you and the stuff I'm going to do to you, the sexual stuff I'm going to do to you, which is interesting, but it's a PartynNextdoor album, and I kind of expect this. Now, I will say, forwardly, this is probably the most explicit we're going to get from PartynNextdoor, because other PartynNextdoors aren't like this. And so, when he threw it, everyone was concerned about the cover. I was one of those people, I was like, this cover is concerning. I will talk about my gripes once I finish when I talk about this album. But there's one song in particular that I do want to kind of point out. And I say, I'm sorry I'll stop, but it does sound like, it sounds like Wayne is, I don't know what it is. It does sound like Wayne's on Sorry I'm Outside at the very end. It seems weird, but it could be PartynNextdoor just rapping. And he's so versatile that this is great. So this is probably the 12th song on the album. And we get Family, where it's not as sexual. It's just the song. when you hear it, it's just like I love this album, like I do. Now it's the best album I've heard on R&B. Why? No, but it's in this song "Family." It's this album is something you just if you're looking for an R&B album in 2024, I would suggest it, right? Because you get and Family talks about just singing them because he's moved from Ontario. He's moved from Ontario, which it's just you can hear them having a celebration about family, and I don't know if this was. I don't know if this album in itself was supposed to be produced the way it was, right? Because I told you, he talks about chocolate. He talks about a lot of stuff, right? And so some of the songs, now these songs are like 3 minutes long a piece. He's like, he'll go ta-da. You know, it's so funny to hear. But it does. It just genuinely seems like he's trying to tell a story between two people. And the way that this story is told, it's okay. It's not by any means like the greatest R&B album I've ever heard, right? But it's an album that if I was one of the artists, I pushed played and randomed it. I think this has like maybe three skips, right? But overall, this album in itself is just something where I'm like, this album could be generated by anybody, and I would enjoy it. Now, I do have to say this as a huge disclaimer. I'm not affiliated with OVO at all, or PartynNextdoor. I'm not affiliated with any of them. It is interesting. It's very interesting. And so, we're going to kind of get into my few gripes about this album. And people were like, what gripe? You're probably like, what gripes could you possibly have? The way you've been acting for these past couple minutes, I would assume you love this album. Nothing's wrong with this album at all. and I do get it, right? Like, if you had and I think this is my thing. My thing is, for her friends, her old friends, Resentment, and Real Woman, right? I understand. I do. I understand why Woman was the single, was one of the singles to drop for this album. However, PartynNextdoor, or whoever decided this, at this decision, why wasn't Curtain? I think you get Real Woman and her old friends, and you wonder what this album's gonna be. And I thoroughly enjoyed those two songs. Resentment, I wasn't, and I'm still not the biggest fan of, right? I just think another lead single, if you wanted another lead single for this album, like 3 lead singles before you drop it, I'm debating, because Control is something I probably would have dropped first, but we could argue that Control's been leaked and people believe, that there's a version of Control out there. Or Lose My Mind, but Stuck in My Head, for me personally, is one of my favorites. But that's a little bit off topic. But I think you pick another one as a third song, and I think I probably would have enjoyed this a little bit more going into it before hearing the album, because while they all sound spacious and they all sound energetic, it's not by far like the best 3 to lead this album off with. We could argue about that. I think personally, I think Control is a better verse. I do. I think Control is a better verse. I think Cheers even might be better. I get it, right? This is gonna be argued that this is gonna be a sexual album, and most of it probably could be considered to be a sexual album. I think you get to Family, Resentment, and you're like, yeah, this could be a sexual album if we take these away. I'm sorry, I'm outside. This is another one where you could think of it as a sexual album, but I think PartynNextdoor gives us a fair enough split. Now, this isn't really this is more like a personal, I don't know, more of a personal gripe. I love the way that PartynNextdoor sounds on this whole album. I think I love it. But there are certain parts that sound very spaced out. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? But if you compare Party Mobile to this, which I would never hope, if this is your first time listening to PartynNextdoor after Party Mobile with Rihanna, say go listen to P&D 3, PartynNextdoor 3, or the Clouds. But this, I don't know. He sounds more spacious, and I don't necessarily know if I love it, but it's not something I really hate. It's just kind of there because I've never heard PartynNextdoor kind of be this spacious on an album. And we could argue PND 2. My other question, and I haven't had any confirmation about it, but I'm trying to figure this out. We normally get a Drake and PartynNextdoor single on the album. We got it for 1, we got it for 2, we got it for 3, and we got it for Party Mobile. My question is, were they deciding if members should be on this album? And did the contributor offset this? Because if that's the case, I get it. And if you want to go, well, the first song he wanted to drop, he wanted it to be BBL Drizzy B. That's fine. I would have loved for them to keep the tradition of Drake being on the feature. And then another artist, if you want to go that far. Another artist I suggest, if anyone's listening, I do Bryson Tiller, but I think you get to this album, and it's not really like a bad place at all, right? But I do wonder, if you ask me, who drops a better album? I wonder if we go, hey, you get another feature on this album. And this is my thing, if they go, well, Drake wanted an R&B feature for his album, For All the Dogs, so Party gave him that feature for Members, which I'm not saying Members is bad, right? But I think Members probably made it, I think, and it's not as downbeat as you get to the album, but I just wonder, could we have dropped this another way? I don't know. I don't know. I think they used For All the Dogs to hype up PartynNextdoor's album, to know PartynNextdoor was going to drop, because PartynNextdoor didn't do a traditional rollout, which, that's fine. I think The Real Her is I think The Real Her and Her Old Friends are a good one. I think Resentment falls bad as a third release way to the album. But I don't know. It's ultimately it's OVO's choice. And it's also Republic's choice. But I don't know. It's something interesting to see happen in a year where you would. Okay. So I've given my feedback. I've given the pros to the album. I've given feedback for the album. People are like, this is probably the longest I've heard you talk more about an album. It's difficult for me to rate this album because technically I want to give this an album a 10 out of 10. However, that comes with a bias because I'm a huge fan of PartynNextdoor. Also, I love the P&D series. However, in all honesty, this is going to be tough. But I'm going to give him a 7.9. And the reason I'm going to give him a 7.9 is I have to kind of claim. Vocally, I love it. On the track, though, he does sound a little more spacious than I would prefer. And the debate is still happening. But do we have enough sexual songs to explicitly is there an even split? And I don't know if there is. I think we get the P&D for it. And I have to remind you, it is technically 14 songs. So you would expect 7 and 7. I think this album might be more sexual than people assume. But at the same time, I don't know what you expect from an album under PartynNextdoor. Because it's not going to be anything like Party Mobile. So I don't know. It puts me in a tricky spot. So I'll put it like this. I love the album. I think it's not going to be the color. I don't know. I think the color 2 is a good EP. But I wonder. I don't know. PartynNextdoor number 4. I'm gonna say 7.9 because the vocal I think is right. I think the beat is great. I think the beat. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the distortion that you can hear, kind of, and I'm not a huge fan of distortion. But it's before people say, hey, well, the distortion's only the way you're listening. I've listened to this album, and I kid you not, I've listened to this album since its release in the early month of May. Listen to this album no short of at least 7 times all the way through, and I think I've only probably skipped maybe 2 songs on this album. But it's a very strong R&B contender for album of the year. If you ask me, it's a very tough and it's a very strict one. But if we were gonna give an album of the year or R&B album of the year, it would have to be this. The writing on this is remarkable. The writing on this is remarkable. However, I think the distortion for me is gonna at least take off 3 points. I like the distortion, but it's not like the distortion's not worth. It's some of these tracks feel very distorted from the beat, and that's not a bad thing. But it's in some beats you can tell the difference, and I think that's kind of my issue. I don't know. My God, about it. The other one is I'm not really holding this against the album, but as I said, I do think the lead rollouts would have been a little bit different if I had per se written it. I don't know, and the Drake feature in itself. Now the Drake feature isn't huge, but it's I don't know. I get it, right? Because it came out Kendrick Beef and overshadowed PartynNextdoor's album, which okay, but I think this would have got more play if we had got like a Drake feature to it, and we didn't, and so this album kind of faded below the beef. Which I admit, the beef is weird timing. The beef is weird timing. It's been happening for years, but for them to actually go into a beef, it kind of took a while. So I don't know why, and I think this might have been part of the reason to cover up this album that PartynNextdoor dropped. I don't know why, but it's this album's good. I just have concerns. I have concerns of what he puts out next, and it's only because Kendrick mentioned him and he says Party isn't messing with his nose rank, which is concerning. But I don't know, this album's catchy. The beats are nice. The beat at a certain point halfway through, I'll go song 6 to song 7, starts sounding similar, but it doesn't de-drain the different songs we're getting from him in this album, which I do enjoy. With that all being said, I hope you enjoyed my interpretation of I hope you enjoyed King CJ's music podcast interpretation of Part P and D4. And I know I'm late, right? But this album I've kind of been sitting on waiting to do a review on because it's one of my favorite albums. And so this was something I just couldn't put out during the Kendrick beat. This was also something I just couldn't put out with another artist I'm gonna talk about in another episode. I just couldn't put this together the same week. And so it was something I said, hey, if I'm gonna do it, I have to do this right. Because this is an artist that I believe could have an R&B artist of the year. I can't speak right now. That sounds weird, and I might sound nasally, but I don't know. It's weird. I like this album, and it's one of the best R&B albums I've heard so far. But it's 7.9 out of 10, and that's not because I hate the album. I don't. I quite enjoy the album. There's just a few minor things about this album that I would change. And And so I have to let that bias kind of like go. I think he's one of the best R&B artists. I kind of have to let that go because he's not really the best R&B artist, but that's another discussion for another day, in which that episode is probably longer. This is the World of 68 Music Podcast. I hope you enjoy your Sunday. I hope you enjoy your Saturday. I hope you enjoy your Sunday. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your week while we talk about music. And if you like this episode, I would definitely, actually, just listen to another one. And this podcast is just available wherever you get your music from. With that being said, we'll see you in the next one.